Welcome to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Cars.com, Valvoline, and Goodyear. Here's your MotorWeek podcast host, John Davis.
Hello and welcome everyone to our MotorWeek podcast number 5, coming to you from MotorWeek Studio A. And around the table, we have some of the best brains that we have at MotorWeek. Let me start with senior writer and reporter Dave Durso.
Hey, John. How's it going?
Writer Shamit Choksi.
How are you, John?
Assistant producer Ben Davis.
Cheerio, John.
And reporter and producer Stephen Chupnick.
Hello.
Okay, as we do with all of our podcasts, we're going to get right to it. Ben, we're going to turn to you first. Ben is one of the 2 or 3 people that really on our staff knows the ins and outs of every car that we test, because you see Ben crawling in and out of almost every car we test. 2009 Audi A4 Avant, the 09 Audi A4 Avant. Why does this A4, what's different?
This is one that would definitely go on my top 3 so far this year. This car is amazing. There's technology and engineering, maybe over-engineering, but I love it. Keep it coming. Sophisticated engineering everywhere you look in this thing, even in the back, the hold-downs, the sunshade behind the rear passenger seats. It's amazing. They cut no corners on this car. It's jam-packed with everything you'd expect a much higher line Audi to have in it. And a joy to drive. I think the dash, is it out of the S5? Or it looks really right. Similar.
It's very similar. The S5 is actually based on the same chassis. So you've got all of the qualities that everybody likes in the A4, which the new A4 has just gotten universally great praise.
That's awesome.
But here we have basically a sport wagon version of it, which has not been the most popular type of vehicle in the U.S. But boy, doesn't it make sense when you drive it?
I can't believe it's not the most popular form, actually. It's a no-brainer for me.
It is a sport wagon in true sense. It does handle much better than you would ever expect wagons to handle. I mean, they really did put some of the
steering is awesome. When you're in low speeds and you need to take sharp corners, the steering wheel, it's super responsive, but it goes light, so it's you can flick it around with one finger, and then under speed it'll stiffen up real taut. It's great.
Yeah, I was very impressed with all the features on the wagon and the looks. I mean, for a sport wagon or an estate, as they would call it in Europe, it's just a sharp-looking car. I mean, you could almost say it looks more like a 5-door hatchback than does a wagon. I think that's why they really don't use the term wagon. That's what Avant essentially means.
It's all in the name, I'm sure.
Not to be a downer, the only thing that about the vehicle that surprised me was that the cargo hull is a little bit smaller than it was before. Even though the vehicle, the passenger room has expanded, the wheelbase is longer, that's the only compromise.
So as a young father, you would find that a bit of a drawback.
I tend to be thinking in that direction these days. I wouldn't have said this 2 years ago. I wouldn't have cared. But
Shamit has family has one child, and you got a second on the way. So
that's right.
That kind of stuff is going to be even more important when you're selecting a vehicle.
That's correct.
Oh, with 2, yeah, I can see where you're coming from.
But I do think that we got so completely away from the station wagon in this country and with minivans that they do have a place. I mean, I've got an old Volvo wagon, so they're easier to get into than a lot of the taller vehicles. And when you combine that with the sportiness like Audi has done, and like in the past we've seen BMW and Saab do, they're great vehicles. They shouldn't be overlooked.
Sure.
Yeah. Bring them back. Wagons are cool.
And speaking of other types of people movers, Dave Durso, 2 vehicles that have come down the pike recently, both of them kind of Johnny-come-latelys to their segments. The 2009 Chevrolet Traverse, which is a crossover, and the 2009 Suzuki Equator midsize pickup truck. Let's start with the Traverse. Why should anybody care if Chevrolet finally gets a full-size crossover?
Well, I think in this case, some people are just Chevrolet fans, and that's what they've been buying, so they want to be able to get into this big full-size crossover. But more significantly, this is GM's trying to make their big crossovers more fuel efficient. So they've finally equipped them with a direct injection engine.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, and for a lot of people, if you're a Chevy person and you've been waiting for something like this, it's finally rolling in, and it's built on the same Lambda platform as like the Saturn Outlook. GMC Acadia. So it's it's pretty much sharing most of the mechanicals with those. It'll be familiar to any GM fan.
The only downside for these big crossovers, say compared to something like a Tahoe, is you're not going to get as much towing, right?
No, you're not quite as much, but it's still quite capable.
And I believe that the fuel economy loop that we did on the Traverse, where we got 20 and city and highway combined, that actually was the same as we got with the Tahoe hybrid.
Yeah, it was absolutely
for a whole lot less money.
It's a solid vehicle. It's very efficient. I mean, you're not lacking in terms of passenger room, cargo room. 7 and 8 passenger. Yeah, so it's a very efficient vehicle, and I think it could actually do very well, better than it'll do some of the truck-based ones that they've been relying on up till now. And I know in your report you were talking about some of the aerodynamic aspects of it that they applied to it. They have tightened this thing up in every possible way. I mean, every seam, every gap has been closed up to try and make this vehicle more efficient. I mean, they put a lot of work into this one. Yeah, we've picked the Lambda, the big GM crossovers, as our top family utilities for the last couple of years. This just seems to be a new chapter. Any other comments from around the table? Everybody had a chance to get in the Traverse. That resounding input. Ben?
I was muscled out of the Traverse, actually. I didn't get a share on that one. So I think it's a conspiracy against me.
That was a conspiracy. I had in my driveway, I have a Buick Enclave, and I was surprised at how much of the Enclave is in the Traverse. It shares most of the body panels and some of the interior appointments. But boy, would I like to have that new engine. Yeah, it's a nice engine. They've done a nice job on it. It's a lot smoother than some of the engines they've offered earlier in their SUVs. And like I said, it does do a little bit better. You're not getting a huge increase in fuel mileage, but you're getting a couple miles per gallon more over some of the earlier vehicles, and that can make a real difference in a family budget sometimes. Even that change. All of the big crossovers right now are advertising highway fuel economy 24, 25, 26 within those three numbers, and that's where this call falls. Let's switch gears to the Equator, which is Suzuki's first North American pickup truck. It's not really their truck, right? Well, it's really Nissan's truck in a lot of ways. It's a Frontier. It's a Frontier, and it's actually going to be built in Tennessee in the same plant as the Frontier. Suzuki got a chance. They took it. They restyled it. They added some of their own features. They retuned the suspension a little bit for their off-road package, and they did a nice job. It's a nice little truck, and Suzuki, they've been wanting to get into the truck market, and in Suzuki fashion, they didn't go overboard and go with a full-size truck because I think like a lot of people, they saw that full sizes were in big trouble. Yeah. So they were able to hook up with Nissan and get this vehicle out there, and it offers everything you'd expect. You can get an extended cab, you can get a crew cab, you can get different bed lengths and all that. So it's got a lot of choices for the Suzuki buyer. Now, what do you think about their marketing approach? They're telling everybody, well, if you own a Suzuki motorcycle or ATV, now you've got something to haul it around in. Yeah, so. Well, actually, for a few people, there will be a connection there. I think more than anything, it allows new buyers coming in to look at that and see it gives them a fun image. More than anything else, people will look at that and say, oh, yeah, I've had a Suzuki ATV, I've had a Suzuki, or somebody I know has had one. And so it gives them a little different approach, a little way to bring the buyer in. But the vehicle itself is I think, going to appeal to a lot of people. It's not just going to appeal to somebody who's already got a Suzuki in the garage. Suzukis have always struggled in the U.S., and that's despite the fact they built some very, very good vehicles, and they haven't. Pardon?
Bring back the Samurai.
Yeah, I think that probably will be the albatross around their neck forever.
That's true.
A lot of people love the Samurai, but it got a bad rep for in a lot of the safety quarters. But since then, a lot of their small utilities and cars of excellence. But it seems to be a tough sale. They have a great warranty, which, by the way, they will have that. They will actually, I think, have a better warranty on the Equator than Nissan has on the Frontier. Yeah, one thing I was most impressed when I drove it was we got to take it the RMZ off-road package. They did a really nice job with that. It's got their own tuning, so I think it's actually it rides a little better over bumps than the Nissan does. They retuned it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great baseline pickup. The only problem is, and I don't want to sound like a hater here, but the thing
Equator hater.
It was it was stuck in. If you guys remember, it was stuck in four-wheel drive for a couple of days, and I think it took Ben to actually jar it out. was it you? I don't know who rescued it, but so I didn't get to get a real on-road feel of the vehicle, and I'm looking forward to it because it's now going to be a part of our long-term fleet.
Yeah, and so we'll see whether or not that little initial problem rears its head.
Yeah, you could blame that on press. It is in the press fleet, which is not a delicate bunch.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, people don't realize they like to. There's some folks out there that think that when the press gets a test vehicle, it's been. Shall we say, given the VIP treatment? Well, let me tell you, it's lucky. It's got gas in it, and it's usually washed. And
I think the official rating is 1 press mile equals 5 normal miles.
I would say that's probably adequate.
If they could put water in the tank, they'd probably try.
Speaking of import brands, Stephen Chupnick, one of the first segments that you produced when you came with MotorWeek, which is now coming back, is Hot Import Nights. Now, you're the right age and demographics for Hot Import Nights, but give our audience an idea of what that event was really all about.
Well, basically, Hot Import Nights is it's brought over from Asia. Obviously, it's the drifting aspect of driving the young, souped-up cars,
sport compacts.
Right? They've been around for at least maybe 5 to 10 years in a general area here in the States. But basically, it's drifting. It's loud engines. It's the audio speakers in the trunks. It's everything that you think of when you think of fast driving around a track or without being NASCAR or anything like that.
Isn't it just the modern reincarnation of a hot rod meet?
Yeah, it pretty much is with a modern
younger,
I think,
and the kind of cars they drive.
I think, and definitely the cars that you see that
it's much more of a hip hop atmosphere.
Yeah, I mean you definitely see
as opposed to going to a hot rod meet and hearing a bunch of 50s music.
I mean, Dave, you produced the segment, and you've actually had been to a Hot Import Nights before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're very exciting events. They really are. I mean, they really bring together the cars, the music. The youth culture, and they do a really nice job of getting it together. And this one was a lot of fun. They had a good crowd, and they had drifting, as Stephen mentioned. They had drifting exhibitions, they had competitions, they had bike stunts, that sort of thing. Lots of live music, some live hip hop artists. And it's a very flashy event, too.
Now, the one we went to, they go all over the country, obviously.
Yeah.
But the one we went to was their night shift event, and they did it in Maryland. But, Stephen, you've just come from California where you were living. And, I mean, did you feel like you were back at home there?
Yeah. I mean, even on the streets of California, of L.A., you see these guys going in and out of the highway as fast as they can on the highway with traffic. But you see, you see them all around. But
this was kind of an event where they can all get there and strut their stuff legally, I guess.
Oh, yeah, it's definitely legal in this aspect, in this little enclosed area. The one thing that I found pretty neat was this dyno exhibit that people were able to bring their cars up and test out how much power they
see
really
how
had.
powerful they really were.
There's always everybody's always looking for bragging rights. When you start, the turbo kit goes on your car or something, the nitrous goes on your car. Everybody wants to show off, and this is their chance to really, put up or shut up and see who can do that. But without, you're not going out and racing on the street or anything like that. But there's a huge crowd to see that. I mean, everybody lines up to see who's gonna do well on that. I mean, like I said, get that slip at the end of the day with the dyno numbers on it and be able to show it off to your buddies. It's gonna be a big deal.
It looked like one of the most fun events we've covered in years.
They are fun. They're a lot of fun, and they bring in a lot of people who are very, very enthusiastic about their car culture, which is nice to see. Car culture just continues on. It just changes a little from generation to generation, but it never dies.
Yeah, and that's the wonderful thing to me. I remember some years ago, a couple of supposed car experts got on some big TV show and said the car culture in America was dead, and I thought,
not a chance.
Not a chance. It just changes, and that's the great thing. We love our cars in this country one way or the other. Shamit Choksi,
Yes.
your turn. We're going to turn back to four wheels that we've just tested, a car that eagerly awaited, and the car brand, or I should say nameplate, that pretty much has saved Acura over the last dozen years or so. But the 2009 edition of the Acura TL, their mid-size sport luxury sedan, what'd you think of it?
Well, I'll preface it a little bit. I know everybody has an opinion here about it, so I'll kind of open the floor up. But you're right. Acura has rested itself on this car. The brand has depended on this thing. This is the flag. This is Acura's flagship.
Not their most expensive, but their highest volume.
Right, and it's fourth generation. It's bringing in more power than ever, 305 horsepower. But the biggest thing, I think, is the optional all-wheel drive system. It now offers SHAWD, which it never did before.
What makes for those that don't follow the show, their all-wheel drive system is somewhat different.
It is. I mean, it's up there with. I mean, it's compared to Audi's Quattro, to the X-wheel drive system that Saab has. It's a very sophisticated system that we've seen on the RL, the MDX, the RDX. They finally decided to put it on the TL. They got rid of the Type S TL, their sport
their high
version.
performance.
Right. And instead what they did was they said, let's make the TL more of a handler, and that's what we have here, a very, very just sculpted, very aggressive-looking vehicle.
What about that aggressive look?
I'm not sure if I'm sold on that aggressive look. I think it's a case of they're trying to carry that family look over, really establish an identity that.
I call it the Acura Shield or the Gladiator Shield.
Very much looks like that, yeah.
Yeah,
like a coat of arms almost.
I think it's a little overdone in this case, a little too much shield up front.
Well, and the back end, if you look at the back end, it completely mirrors the front end. I mean, it's a reverse shield on the other side. I mean, the Gladiator is the best way to describe this thing.
I have to say, I actually like the new TSX a little bit better. It seems to be what the TL was before.
It's actually a little more fun to drive, I think.
A little smaller shield.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, when I mention that to people that are TL fanciers, they say, oh, well, it's only got a four-cylinder. I said, well, sometimes you need to get less hung up on the size of the motor and just talk about, how well it goes.
Yeah, and the TSX goes very well. It's a lot of fun, like I said. I think the TL, to me, it's starting to feel a little larger. It's starting to feel more, despite their efforts to as Shamit said, tilted more, performance. To me, it's feeling a little more luxury these days.
Yeah. I had just gotten out of the new Maxima when the TL showed up, and I thought these cars are now very comparable, and the Maxima kind of lost its sportiness, too, a couple generations back. Mm-hmm.
Well, let me ask, just Ben, did you take this thing out on the track? Do you remember driving it on the track?
No, I didn't.
It's my understanding. I mean, out on the roads, it takes corners very flatly. I mean, we had the all-wheel drive version, and it just
it performed well at the track. It handled like a big car.
SH is the way to go. I mean, if you haven't driven a SH vehicle, it's amazing. It's like a helping. It's like your good buddy underneath the car helping you in the corners. You really have. It requires no talent at all to drive.
Yeah, the super handling all-wheel drive actually gives you some extra rotation on the outside wheel in the corner, so it's helping to essentially push you around the corner.
Right.
And it does that whether you're on the gas or not. So it's a pretty amazing little system.
Yep.
Okay, so TL basically, I think, to sum it up, is an interesting remake. We're not all quite sold on the styling, but probably if you were a fan of the TL, you'll still be a fan. But I don't know, TSX is going to give us some competition like it's never given it before.
Oh, definitely.
Well, I want to thank everybody for joining us for our MotorWeek podcast number 5. Once again, it's been very enlightening, a lot of fun. I want to thank Jim Bigwood, who's in charge of audio for all our podcasts, and our producer, Michelle Parker, who makes sure that we're all ready to go when we do these entertaining little podcasts. And we'll be back soon with more MotorWeek podcasts. Until next time, we'll see and hear you on MotorWeek.
You have been listening to the podcast of MotorWeek, television's original automotive magazine. MotorWeek is made possible by Cars.com, Valvoline, and Goodyear. For additional information on podcasts, videos, and showtimes, visit our website at motorweek.org. And watch MotorWeek, television's longest-running automotive magazine series each week on your local PBS station.